I also want to mention that I have a conflict, so I'll only be on for 30 minutes. So I hope that doesn't reflect poorly on me or think I have a lack of interest in this topic. Just time is too divided these days.
Thank you. It's okay. We'll make sure you also have access to the recording, and I can update you later on as well. Okay, so today is our first meeting, or our second meeting actually, under the Product Quality and Reliability Committee. As many of you know, we have changed the name of the group. Now it is, as you can see on the screen, this is going to be our new name moving forward. And ISWP is undergoing several updates, and I'm very happy to share with you that we have Alex, the Executive Director, to share some of those today. What's going to happen today, we're going to have, as I mentioned, Alex, and then we're also going to have Peter Axelson from Beneficial Designs, who's going to be talking about the second part of the air traveling. We did get to see his presentation 3 months ago, but now we're going to continue on the second part. And we're also going to have Kara Kopplin, who's going to be talking about ISO 17025. I know that some testing centers and manufacturers have had interest in this topic. So I think that is at a good time we're going to have this. And before we start, I would like to just have like a really quick introduction from everyone. So I know that we have a couple people who are new, and I want everyone to at least get to know Matt McPherson, who is the first time who's joining us. So Matt, if you don't mind, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Matthew McPherson. I've worked in the DME industry for about 23 years. In the last decade, I've spent most of my time on certifying a process for technicians in the United States and Canada on how to create appropriate training and exams. And now we're actually doing some international training as well. So that's the majority of my time and work.
Thank you. He's also going to be joining us because we're going to be moving forward, having some interest in technical training. So I think it's at a great time also that Matt's been part of the group. Ben, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
I'm Ben Hubbard. I am part of Beneficial Designs and help Peter with editing our RESNA standards, and was pretty involved in our air travel standards in editing the document as well as illustrating a number of figures for the different sections.
Thank you. Eric, would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. My name is Eric Kondo. I'm a longtime wheelchair user from a spinal cord injury and consider myself a wheelchair tinkerer. I'm experimenting with making different types of wheelchairs.
Awesome. Dr. P, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, John Perlman. I am faculty in the Department of Rehab Science and Technology here at Pitt, and been a long time sort of contributor to especially wheelchair standards work and doing wheelchair testing.
Thank you. Dean, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, guys. My name is Dean. I'm from Cape Town. I work for ISWP, a social enterprise, mostly focusing on wheelchair testing, assistive devices as well.
Thank you. Shona, do you want to go next?
Hi, everybody. Shona from Cape Town. We design and manufacture a range of 24-hour posture support equipment appropriate for rural and under-resourced regions, and really are keen to add value in the testing options for these products globally.
Thanks. Tom, do you want to go next?
Hi, Tom Doyen here from DECA Research in Manchester, New Hampshire. We are the designers of the iBot personal mobility device.
Awesome. Eric Wunderlich, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name.
No, that's good. So yeah, Eric Wunderlich from Latter-day Saint Charities. We're just a global nonprofit that provides wheelchairs and training.
Nice. Peter?
Hi, I'm Peter Axelson with Beneficial Designs, and I run a wheelchair test lab and secretary of our wheelchair standards work in the United States. or Beneficial Designs in the Carson Valley of Nevada.
Thank you. Holly, would you like to go next?
Yeah, my name is Holly. I'm a PhD student at Pitt in RST, and my focus area is on rolling resistance testing, and also building tools to help clinicians use that data.
Thank you. Trisha, I know you just got here. We're just doing a quick intro. Would you like to go next?
Sure.
Actually, yeah, okay.
Hi, everyone. I am faculty in the University of Pittsburgh in the Department of Rehab Science and Technology, and focus a lot on performance standards and testing technology, a lot with seating primarily.
Thank you. And last but not least, Alex. And then you can go ahead with your presentation.
Hello, everyone. Greetings. I'm Alex Kamadu. I'm the Executive Director of the ISWP. I'm based in Johannesburg, and I'm an occupational therapist by background. And thank you, Steph, for that warm introduction and greeting to everyone. I know that your throat is a little bit affected today, so I think, yeah, if we can move to the next slide, and I'll walk us through the updates of ISWP. So next slide, please. Perfect. So it's been very busy at ISWP over the last quarter since we last met. I'm pleased to say that we've now concluded the branding review that we set out to do at the beginning of a few months ago. We worked with a branding firm to develop branding guidelines, to apply the branding guidelines to all our collateral, which are posters, any sort of literature and promotional material that we might use as part of the marketing for ISWP. We're also using this new presentation slide deck as part of the work that was done. And all the work was appropriately signed off with the organization just a few weeks ago. So I hope that you all can appreciate the amount of work that has gone into this. And some of our board members are on the call, and we're very delighted for their input into concluding all the work. If we can go to the next slide. One of the big pieces of work we had to do, you'll see our new logo that we actually revealed on social media just the other day. It took quite a bit of work to, agree on the color scheme. We wanted to have a new refreshed logo that is very current and in line with the work that we're doing. We didn't want to detract from all the earlier work that the founding board and many of you as committee members inputted into. But we did have to go back and look at our mission and a vision, and to make sure that it is still aligned with the work that ISWP currently is doing and the work that we want to do in the future. As such, our new mission is we've tried to place more focus on the individuals that we are trying to improve the work. So it is to empower the wheelchair users and their families by being the global coordinator of the wheelchair sector. And our vision, if things are done correctly, and we hope to realize, is that wheelchair users and their families will have access to appropriate wheelchairs and services within an empowering and supportive environment. It was quite an extensive process that we went through, quite a creative process with the founding board of directors and the agency. But I'm delighted to say this is the new mission and vision, which we launched, just a few weeks or months ago. So next slide. I'm also delighted to say that after the branding review, the brand guidelines are now being incorporated into the redesign or the overhaul of the website. I'm not sure how familiar all of you are with our website, but we found that there were some issues in terms of the navigation with the website. And we just wanted to give it that new, fresh look with the treatment of the new ISWP brand guidelines. So this just gives you a bit of a flavor. We've also going to incorporated some of the products like the ISWP Wheelchair Educators Package, the ISWP Policy Advocacy Kit, and some of the other, so the Product Quality and Reliability Committee resources. Everything is going to be repackaged on this new website, which will make things a lot easier to navigate. We also want to drive more more visits to some of the products that we spend quite a bit of time in developing. But we hope that the new website will actually give people a bit more easier navigation through the various components that we have on the website. We hope to launch the new website around March next year. So I would say we're midway through the piece of work with the organization or the company that's helping us to redesign. We're also going to be integrating the learning management system that houses all our online training and certification. And for those of you that have gone through this sort of process, you'll appreciate the amount of work that needs to go into it. So the organization has developed the wireframe. We've been working very closely with them in terms of the look and feel, but there's still quite a big piece of work to finalize the work before we go into user testing. Next slide. These are just screenshots of what the new website would look like, and we're still working on some of the photos and just the navigation itself. But yeah, you will see that very soon, or the first quarter of next year, the new website will be launched. So watch the space. We're very excited about the look and feel as we work through this process. Next slide. So the first year, as you all know, ISWP has been going through this transition from being incubated under the University of Pittsburgh. We've now almost come to a year since we've done the transition. There's been quite a few big pieces of consolidation and work that needs to have been done that we committed to do as part of the grant that we hold with UNOPS, which ultimately comes from USAID. So the rebranding was one piece of work, which we've concluded. The website is something that we're midway through. And another big piece of work that we've committed resources to is to holding our first AGM, but also to elect a new board of directors. For those who don't know, ISWP was incubated under the University of Pittsburgh since 2015, and the founding board of directors, which came into existence from 2020, now needs to be an elected board of directors as part of our bylaws and as part of our policies and procedures. So what you see on the slide is just a timeline and working backwards from the AGM, which we aim to hold at the end of April. We've got to set in place a series of things, including the setup of a governance and nominating committee that will help us to identify and ratify a slate of candidates that will go out to election. So according to this timeline, early January, we will go out with the call for nominations for directors or people to be nominated for the new board of directors. And then we will have to work with the board to make sure that this is a clean slate. But we're hoping to go to elections early March and run that for a month. And at the AGM, then we will ratify the new board of directors. So it's a very exciting time for us. It's the first time we will be holding elections. It's the first time we will have an AGM. So lots of firsts for us, lots of learning as we go along in this process, but also this is a very important and pivotal piece of work that needs to be done as part of that transition. So next slide, please. Another piece of work that ties in with the elections is around membership dues and benefits. One of the conditions of us having this grant from UNOPS through USAID is that we become less reliant on grant funding. And as such, we've got to introduce other income streams. And so at ISWP, we've been thinking up a resource mobilization strategy and plan. And one of the components of or area that we want to introduce income streams is through the introduction of membership dues. We've come up with the membership due stratification and the benefits that go alongside this. There'll be various categories that we're going to be introducing once the website goes live. And these range from individual to organizational, NGOs broken up into international and regional or local NGOs, as well as association category, which is related to students, and finally community members. And community members are basically members that choose to not become a paying member, but want to still be part of our community, but they'll have very limited benefits. For example, they cannot be part of any of the committees, nor can they vote in any of the upcoming elections. We currently have around just over 9,000 members registered with ISWP, and they are all currently members that do not pay any membership benefits. So once we introduce the membership dues as an incentive, we do want to still continue to offer free membership from the launch date up until the end of December 2024. And our membership dues will only become effective from January 2025. As part of the new website development, we're going to introduce PayPal, and it's been recommended that we look at other pay functionalities that will allow people to pay, so that we're not restrictive in terms of that. And we are looking at those with the website developers. And we don't want to lose any of those 9,000 members. So like I say, anyone that's not selected any options will automatically convert into our community members. So they're still part of our community, but they will have limited access. And we will be launching, as part of a campaign early next year, what those membership due categories entail and what the benefits entail for each of those and what the dues are as well. Next slide. We've also been very busy working on some of our strategic alliances and arrangements. And we're pleased to say that we signed an MOU with Flying Disabled Limited, which is part of a consortium called Air for All, which is made up of SWS, which is a certification organization, and Priestman Goody. And so the ambition is to try and improve air travel for people in their wheelchairs. And this consortium is actually working with Sunrise Medical and Delta Airlines to have a prototype ready where certain powered wheelchairs can actually be docked in planes. And so it's an exciting piece of work, but we're only going to be working with Flying Disabled, which is one partner in the consortium, towards achieving these commitments. We've managed to send out 2 newsletters, which had all the information around our updated mission, vision, and logo. And we're also working quite actively on our basic test 2.0. So for those who don't know, as part of the certification process, individuals have to take a test. We're currently piloting a test that is over 170 questions, but we knew that we needed to rationalize this as part of the pilot. I'm pleased to say that we're now down to about just under 70 questions, and we're going to go through user testing, and the manuscript will be released soon. And this new test will be reintroduced back into the community. So once individuals take the test, they then are eligible, if they pass with a 70% pass rate, to apply for certification, the ISWP certification. Another exciting piece of work we're doing, we're working with WHO Europe division to roll out training and certification in Ukraine. We just went through a whole process to train 39 individuals. These are physios and OTs in the country, and they've been through the whole certification process. And WHO Europe has just committed to do training and certification for another 90 individuals. 80 of those will go through the basic certification, and another 10 will go through the intermediate certification. So this is a very exciting piece of work for us. We're also in discussion with the WHO around doing the same sort of training and certification in Georgia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. The numbers are not as high as in the Ukraine, but it's a very exciting piece of work because ISWP is also working towards having a long-term agreement or strategic partnership with the WHO. And all these activities count towards our work plan that we would like to eventually have a long-term agreement with the WHO. We're also actively involved with the World Rehabilitation Alliance, which is part of the WHO, and we're working on developing a position paper around developing a rehabilitation workforce education. And the whole background to the WRA is around improving or access to rehabilitation globally. And there are 5 work streams, and ISWP is an active member of the workforce work stream. And we contribute towards, we're actually leading a subgroup around this position paper around how we might, improve the workforce education particularly in low and middle income countries. Next slide. We also held 2 webinars in this period. We just recently had one going against gravity, which took place on the 8th of December. We actually had around 70 people join this webinar, which was a real great number. And we also had Sarah Clayton from Simple Stuff Works, who presented on translating theory to assessment and assessment to intervention. That was in August, and yeah, it was very well attended, lots of engagement. So we will continue to roll out these webinar series by experts. Next slide. We also were very delighted to take part in a few conferences. Amira Tawashi and our colleague Ksenia at the WHO Ukraine presented a poster outlining the collaboration that I just mentioned earlier, where ISWP, together with the WHO Ukraine and the Ministry of Health in the Ukraine, came up with this capacity building program that we want to roll out across the various provinces over the next 2 years. I also partook in the Oceania Seating Symposium, where I presented on the resources from ISWP. We tried to elicit more engagement from that part of the world. I also partook in a panel discussion around credentialing and what that might mean for globally in terms of certification and where we're going in terms of wheelchair certification. And I also managed to present at the ARATA Australia AGM on the wheelchair provision guidelines. Also, our Deputy Chair, Silvana Contepomi, just recently presented ISWP at the Pan-African Health Organization Conference in Rio. And she's from the region, so it was very important to have someone from the region present ISWP and the wheelchair provision guidelines. And on the next slide, you will see just a few photos from the various conferences. So yeah, ISWP, as you know, we try to be, or our ambition is to be coordinating the activities in the sector. So this is part of our role to be present at the conferences, but also to try and roll out more or motivate for more regional conferences, because we all know it's very difficult for people to travel to these international conferences. And a big piece of work that we want to do in 2024 is to look at how we might work with the organizers of these international seating symposia to roll out more regional conferences that are more applicable and more accessible for people in the regions. So I've come to the end of presentation. I just wanted to say, yeah, we will be talking a little bit about this, but as part of this committee, we're also going to be looking at the terms of reference, seeing whether it is still fit for purpose. We've developed some draft terms of reference that we'll be circulating together with the link for this presentation or this committee meeting, and we will be putting out a call, and the commitment will be there will be 3 meetings over the course of early next year, around about an hour each, and these will be these virtual Zoom meetings. So I think Stephanie will be elaborating a bit more when she sends out the draft terms of references. But I just wanted to say in conclusion, a very big thank you. I'm always heartened by how many people take time off their very busy days to attend this particular committee. The commitment from each of you is not gone unnoticed. And from me, I just wanted to say a massive thank you, and looking forward to working with all of you in the new year. And wanted to wish you all a very festive and happy seasonal greeting. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Alex. Does anyone have a question for Alex, or more than one question? Bye, Dr. B. He's just saying bye to everyone and happy holidays. He needs to leave. Shauna, would you like to ask something? I saw that you got unmuted. No? Okay. So I just wanted to let everyone know that moving forward, we're gonna switch to Teams. So ISWP has a new account with Teams. So we're not gonna be using Zoom anymore. I have a new email for ISWP, so please expect an email from a very long email because I have a long last name, but you're gonna see that I'm gonna be creating a new email link for this upcoming meetings. Hopefully we won't need to keep changing more links. So I want to excuse again the number of links that we have changed, especially in 2023. So hopefully in 2024, we will continue to just have one. Our next meeting is going to be on March 13th at the same time. And again, as Alex mentioned, we're going to have a group of volunteers. So I may be sending an email soon after this meeting. Please let me know if you're interested. This is specifically for the people who have been part of this group for quite some time, so that you guys can help us shape better our draft and how this committee is going to work together towards product quality and reliability. So we're looking for your input to make sure that we can have a committee that can respond to the board. Okay, so with that being said, I'm just gonna let Peter go next and let us know if you have any questions during or after the meeting. Thank you.
Hi, so Ben's gonna pull up the slides for me. He needs access, I guess, can share,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, he should be fine. Let me know if you have any issues though.
Okay, just one moment while I get it ready.
Yep, take your time.
So did I hear, Stephanie, there's 9,000 members, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
ISWP. Awesome. So Beneficial Designs, we're a wheelchair test lab here in Minden, Nevada. We've been, I've been the chairman of the RESNA Assistive Technology for Air Travel Standards Committee, and we've just, we're still
I'm not
completing
sure.
the balloting for Section 3, the requirements in hand. It's going. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, on my end it froze for a second, but I don't know if for everyone else it happened. Sorry.
Same for me, but then it caught up a bit.
Yeah.
I can turn off my camera if that happens again. So I'm going to cover this third section, which is going through the final review by the Assistive Technology Standards Board and review by the ANSI open process. So I'll just ask for Ben to forward to the next slide here. So we completed Section 4 of the standard a couple of years ago. It's got 4 sections. The first one we completed was the specifications for a wheelchair that's specifically designed for air travel. This means it had certain features that would make it less likely to be damaged. And Section 3 is the handling procedures, which I'm going to cover at this meeting. I covered Section 4 at the last meeting, and gave a brief overview of Section 3. Sections 1 and 2 are the sections left to complete. The vocabulary and definitions section has been drafted, and the Section 2 is the information instructions for preparing wheelchairs to be stored and transported. And going on to the next slide. This is just a kind of an overview of what's going to be in Section 1 and Section 2. It's kind of the pre-travel things that need to happen. Section 3 is looking at verifying the mobility device at the airport, preparation of the device for air travel, transfer of the air device from the jetway to the baggage area, and then securement of the mobility device in the baggage area, and then preparing the chair for use after air travel, and how to deal with mishandling or damage that occurs to the wheelchair if that happens. Next slide. So, of course, the wheelchair has to be short enough to get into the baggage area of the aircraft, and so on about half of the aircraft out there, the Boeing aircraft, it has to be shorter. So a taller product, as you can see, is not going to go into the aircraft, so that's a problem. So the chair can reduce in height by tilting or reclining, or a back support could remove or fold forward to become lower. Next slide. The battery type has to be verified that it's a non-spillable battery. This is the symbol that's been developed for non-spillable, that it has fluid inside, but it's not spillable, it's not vented, it's not just sealed, it's an actual completely non-spillable battery. And then the weight of the product has to be disclosed. Next slide. So for manual wheelchairs, it's a bit simpler for preparing a wheelchair for air travel in the United States. The Air Carrier Access Act allows a manual wheelchair to be stored on board the aircraft if it folds. And wheelchair users are being encouraged to ask for this, to be having their wheelchair stored in the closet on the aircraft, and preparing a chair with headroom, power of activated assist, or other power assist devices needs to be considered for manual chairs. And then lithium-ion batteries that remove from these power assist devices have to be removed for stowage in the aircraft cabin. Next slide. So this is showing what typically has to happen if a wheelchair does not reduce in height. It has to be tilted and put into the aircraft on its side to get in, and then brought vertical again inside the aircraft. Next slide. So, okay, Eric likes the slides. Thank you. So the mobility device either has to fit through the cargo door to prepare for air travel. If it does not fit through, they explain the options to the passenger. They could either tip the device or change flights to find a flight that has larger aircraft doors, which would be on an Airbus type aircraft. Next slide. And the air carrier agent who is responsible for loading the device in the aircraft, and the passenger or their designated companion need to be present together when they're preparing that device for things to go properly, either the passenger or the travel companion. Next slide. So the person might be in the mobility device while it's being prepared for air travel, or they might be transferred to a boarding device, or they might go ahead and board the aircraft while the travel companion stays with the mobility device to prepare it for travel. Next slide. So there's just these 4 basic steps: reduce the height, move components that can be removed, and then isolate battery power and disengage the drive system. So these are the 4 primary steps. Next slide. So reducing the height is to that reduced height that's going to fit through the baggage height that might be occurring on the Boeing aircraft at 33 inches. Next slide. So the standard for the Section 4 wheelchairs, it has to reduce in height if a wheelchair meets that Section 4. So it either adjusts, folds, or remove the back support. Next slide. And until that time that you maybe have a wheelchair that meets that standard, it's imperative to try to determine how to reduce the height. You might have to use tools or put in quick release parts that allow that to reduce in height. Next slide. This shows a wheelchair that has the back support that folds down flat to get in the aircraft. Next slide. So removing components inside the aircraft that could otherwise be lost or damaged. The air carriers are all willing to stow those items in the aircraft. Otherwise, the parts that remove might be lost or damaged during air travel. So we've got a symbol design that shows that removable component there. Next slide. So on a typical powered wheelchair, the things that would be reduced would be the seat cushion, back cushion, the joystick assembly, and the head support. Foot supports might remove, or armrests might remove as well. Next slide. The joystick has to mechanically remove, and it electronically has to remove. This is the most common part of the wheelchair that's damaged during air travel. So having a connector on that to remove it is really helpful. Next slide. So again, consider using tools if you don't have accessories that remove without these tools. Next slide. Another possible consideration for the joystick, if it doesn't remove, is to go down to a place where you can buy plastic containers for storing food and figure out ways to protect it. This one's got a little piece that covers just the joystick itself. There's another picture here that shows a combination of a piece over the joystick and a plastic container that's put over the entire joystick that could be attached with an elastic cord. And this would be for a wheelchair where it's not removable. So this is something to think about, whether the wheelchair has to be reclined or not. Next slide. Isolating the battery power is the next thing that has to be done. So using a switch or a connector. Some powered wheelchairs already have a switch. It's a circuit breaker type switch on this product that switches between on and off to isolate the battery power. Next slide. Sometimes you have to open the access to the batteries to disconnect the connectors where there's no isolation switch to be able to isolate that battery power. Next slide. Again, we're not just talking about turning off the power at the joystick. We're talking about actually isolating the power at the battery source to make the product safe. Disengaging the drive system. This symbol indicates that the drive system's been disengaged. It's signified by a yellow markings on the isolation switches. Next slide. So it's like putting your car in neutral, for example, if you relate it to an automobile. So here's the product. This product does not use the yellow. It has a red indicator on the isolation switch. We're encouraging, the standard is all encouraging the color yellow to be used. If the color yellow is used, we feel that that's a good enough indication of where that isolation is. Here there's yellow on the disengagement lever for the product. Scooters usually only have one. So transferring from the jetway to the tarmac, this is our illustration that shows how powered wheelchairs get from the jetway to the tarmac. Most people don't necessarily understand or realize what wheelchairs got to go all the way back up into the terminal, go to the nearest elevator, down to the tarmac, and then out to the tarmac, back to the aircraft where it can go up the beltway, belt loader. Next slide. So then realize that when you land and make a connection, there's three possible options. It's either going to come back to the jetway to go to the connecting flight, or the wheelchair might go straight to the connecting flight, or the wheelchair might be going to the baggage claim area. Next slide. So once at the tarmac, it's going to go up the belt loader to go into the aircraft. So getting up to the belt loader can be challenging. So there's various kinds of lifts that are available for assisting a powered device that's heavy to get up to the belt loader. And next slide, I think, probably shows the manual method of lifting. Okay, so it doesn't show that, but imagine 4 people lifting a 350-pound wheelchair. That's a lot of weight for people to lift. This is showing the securement of the wheelchair in the aircraft. If the chair has the connection points that are required for a WC-19 transit, those points would be used for securement, or the suspension arms of a wheelchair might be used for securement. Next slide. So preparation for driving use is going to be putting the wheelchair back together, re-engaging the motors, bringing it back to its upright position. Next slide. So again, the people that are involved in preparing the mobility device to be used again should be the passenger or their designated travel companion, to make sure it's put together properly, because wheelchairs can be damaged, putting them back into their usage configuration. Next slide. So again, re-engage the drive system, activate the battery power, reattach the components, and reconfigure the height of the wheelchair for usage. Next slide. So when things don't go well, damage can occur to the chair. The armrest broken, the seating system completely destroyed, a powered wheelchair broken off the wheelchair. That's the kind of thing that can occur from mishandling. Next slide. And if the aircraft is not, we already mentioned returning the chair to the jetway or going to the connecting city. So this is if the damage occurs to the chair, the person's got to decide what they're going to do. Are they going to continue to fly to their destination? Are they going to remain at the connecting city until the device gets repaired or gets found if it's missing, or to return to their original or city of origin? So these options, the air carriers need to completely think through these 3 options if somebody's wheelchair is damaged at a connecting city. Next slide. And then where is the person going to sit when this damage occurs? Are they going to sit in the boarding chair? Are they going to sit in their custom seating system? If that custom seating system's damaged, could they get the pieces of it to sit in? Are they going to go to a hotel bed, or are they going to get to a hospital that has an air bed or something, or rehab facility? What's the person going to sit in? Is there going to be just some loaner wheelchair that's sitting at the airport? That has to be thought through. Next slide. And then the communication with the passenger, telling them what's happened to their wheelchair, allowing the passenger to inspect the wheelchair, and to establish a point of contact has got to be given to the passenger as to what's going to occur with their chair, and then any corrective actions that are going to occur. Next slide. So if the passenger is returning back to their home city, or if they're traveling onward, or if they're going to stay where they are, are they going to find an accessible hotel room or medical facility? That passenger may need assistance with doing those things or getting to their intended destination. Pressure relief has to be considered during this. The repair options for the device is to involve the nearest appropriate mobility device repair business for repair, replacement, or temporary replacement of the chair. The passenger or their designated companion need to be involved in this process. So none of these options have really been thought through or considered in the past. Next slide. So the number of devices that have been mishandled is significant. This was in looking at just one month for the month of March in 2019, 21, 22. You can see that the percentage is low, but the consequences and the numbers of wheelchairs and people that have been affected by this is great. Next slide. Any more slides, Ben?
Just a number of statistics left for damage. So,
is there any other more slides?
Sorry, could I just confirm, is that the number of chairs damaged through Delta?
So this is all wheelchairs. So in the United States, the wheelchair carriers are required to report the number of mishandlings that occur to wheelchairs, and they have to report these numbers. So this is the total number of mishandlings during these years. You can see this is pre-COVID, 10,000 mishandlings, and then when air travel was much less in 2020 and 2021, the numbers were lower because obviously weren't very many people traveling during those 2 years. Next slide. So a survey was conducted by a PBA and United Spinal Association to look at air travel concerns. It's 200 responses. Next slide. 59% of mobility of people reported that their devices had been damaged during air travel. So that's a huge percentage of people that have experienced damage to their wheelchairs. I've experienced damage to my manual wheelchair traveling. So most majority of people have experienced damage. Next slide. So we also conducted a survey, and the research that we did with Jessica Pedersen. We used SurveyMonkey, got almost 700 participants. It was supported by a PVA, Paralyzed Veterans of America grant. Next slide. Yeah, this is shocking. You're right, it's shocking. That's why I started working on these standards. So stowing the mobility device, bring their wheelchair when they can fly, do not check the wheelchair at the ticket counter, store the wheelchair in the belly of the aircraft during flight. So this is how people typically travel. Okay, next slide. So out of the 400 respondents, 44% that the handler taking the wheelchair didn't know how to fold it or place it in the wheelchair, to push the free will mode. 26% they did understand how to do that. Next slide. Damage or loss. Again, 71% in our survey reported their product had been mishandled, and 46% they had damage to the wheelchair. So lots of mishandling and damage to wheelchairs. Next slide. So that's the end of this part of the presentation. And I think we have another presentation too, Ben. So maybe we need to consider doing that at another future meeting. Is that correct, Ben?
Yeah, we have one more for the section 15, the wheelchair standards. It's a lot shorter, but it's up to you.
Yeah, so we can show the title of that, so I can just explain that at least, but Stephanie should think about what she wants me to do at this point.
Yeah, I think it would be great if we can consider that for our next meeting,
Okay.
because we have now with another session with Kara. But I do have a question, if you don't mind. First of all, I think what you shared was very impressive and shocking, and especially with all the statistics that you presented. I'm glad that you're taking the lead on this. So my question is about for the aircraft handlers. Are they also going to receive some type of technical training so that they
Yeah,
can do
so
this part?
section 2 is going to cover training, so that's where we're working on next. So yeah, training is going to be a really important part, and making a recommendation into how often the training occurs, and how long the training is. So those are some of the variables, and we've Open Doors is providing input for that part of the standard. It's felt that that initial training has to be at least, I think, 2 or 3 hours, I believe, for the handlers, and then the training has to occur on a regular basis. So like on an annual basis, there needs to be an additional certain amount of training that occurs, because there's a lot of turnover that occurs in the people that do that work. So that training has got to be repeated to make sure that training gets through. Some of you may have seen the video that went viral with the wheelchair being dropped into the chute that goes down, the wheelchair goes flying down the chute and tumbles off the end of the bottom of the chute across the tarmac. And the person that was watching that said that he saw 2 wheelchairs come flying down the chute, got his phone out to take the picture of the 3rd wheelchair that came down the chute, and that's the one that went viral with the damage. And so the Department of Transportation is looking into that. So it was a very bad situation that, if you want to see it, you can Google American Airlines video of, wheelchair coming down chute.
And I think Eric Kondo shared that link with us. Yes, in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, so the presentation that I will give the next time is section 15, and the wheelchair standards have ISO 7176 Part 15 and RESNA Section 15 cover the information that's required for disclosure, and the Department of Transportation and the Air Carrier Advisory Committee felt so strongly that all wheelchairs should have an air travel configuration card. I talked about those cards and presented them at the last meeting, and that air travel configuration card provides the information on how to prepare the wheelchair for air travel. And so it's felt that all wheelchairs should have that, regardless of whether they meet the air travel standard. And so section 15 is just completed the RESNA balloting process, and now it will go to ATSB and go through the remainder of the balloting process for inclusion in the wheelchair standards for information disclosure. And there's been encouragement and suggestions for that section 15 standard to be put forward to the ISO, to the International Wheelchair Standards. So thank you, Matt, for your input. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think Shauna has a question.
No, I just had a comment about the training. So we've carried out quite extensive training here a few years ago with the airlines on actually how to engage with the wheelchair users themselves and moving and handling, because we were coming across wheelchair users that were actually injured during transfer into their chair and disrespected and treated like baggage themselves, let alone their wheelchairs. So the need for the actual sensitization or awareness around the physical and emotional interaction with the client, I think, or should be included into the training of the product management.
Right. So this presentation only covered the statistics related to damage to the wheelchair and the fact that the passenger or their travel companion needs to be involved in preparing the wheelchair for air travel. But our research had numbers about the transfer injuries, and I can tell you that 21% of everyone that's been in a boarding chair has either fallen over in that boarding chair or fallen out of that boarding chair. So that's possibly another presentation, Stephanie, that we could do at another meeting, is to cover the other parts of our research that cover all the seven issues that we identified, from the steep jetway to the transferring to the boarding chair or transferring to the aircraft seat, the boarding chair hazards, getting onto the aircraft in the boarding chairs, and sitting in the aircraft seating with the pressure relief problems there. So those are all the other topics that I have in another presentation that could be covered in a future presentation as well.
But
Yeah, that
Peter,
would
would
be
you
great.
be able to share that research with us, or is it not yet published?
No, that research is something that we can share at a future session if Stephanie would like to do that.
No,
Yeah,
it
that
would
would
be
be great.
really useful to use it for lobbying at local level, to have those stats and be able to use them to improve local services. So if I could see those presentations or have access to the research, it would be very valuable.
Yeah, in the United States, the air carriers themselves are not involved in the transferring people. They have contractors that provide those services on contract for the air carriers, where they do those transfers. And there's lots of problems with language barriers and strength and training, lifting people with injuries, and there's technologies available. The Eagle transfer device actually lifts people in a sling and takes them down the aisle and sets them in their aircraft seat. And so there are lift technologies that are available that should really be used instead of manually lifting people, which risks injuries to the people doing the lifting and to the passenger.
Sure, I think we can definitely be delighted to have you present about those topics in our upcoming meetings. We do have other presenters who are also interested, so maybe we can try to figure out the agenda for next meeting soon. I'll be in touch with you, Peter. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone else have another question before we go with Kara? No? If not, Kara, thank you. You can go ahead and share your screen. Just in case you are muted.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yep. We can see your screen now.
You can? Okay, great.
Yeah.
If I can find the presentation mode, that will be even better. Sorry. Well, I think I'll leave it here if that's all right.
Sure.
All right, thanks. So thanks so much for letting me have this time to speak. We have talked in the past about the laboratory requirements of either good laboratory practices or being certified to 17025. And the reason this is an important topic for this group is that we know that the standards that we use for our wheelchairs and our wheelchair seating system are rather specialized. And it's hard to find labs that have the capabilities and the understanding about appropriately applying these methods. These aren't methods that you can just easily call any 1705 certified lab and ask them to conduct them. So that's a consideration for us. And then there's also a financial burden that often comes for manufacturers. And when they're required to use a lab that is 17025 certified. So we started this discussion about 2 years ago, and we thought we could give a quick update, a quick overview of where we've been, where these requirements are set, and then talk about some new developments, but then most importantly, have a conversation about what your experiences have been and what we can do to maybe further improve the situation. So 17025 is a generic certification for laboratories, and the intentions are good there, and it's intended to make sure that laboratories are following those appropriate laboratory practices for controlling their equipment and their environment and their reporting and doing things scientifically and appropriately. In the US, the FDA does not require that laboratories, especially those used for wheelchairs and wheelchair seating, they don't require that they be 17025 certified. They do require that good laboratory practices followed. And of course, an ISO 17025 certification is one way to demonstrate that those controls are in place. And those requirements are covered by a number of systems. They're the basic requirements of controlling calibration and of equipment and having proper training of personnel, etc. So there are several ways that you can demonstrate that you meet good laboratory practice if the FDA or another body asks for that evidence. Interestingly, I just came across this for ISO 10993, which is the biocompatibility testing standard. In the US, the FDA, again, is pointing out that they want to see that labs that conduct these tests use good laboratory practice, but they then specifically said the FDA does not recognize ISO IEC 17025. So what I found, and I've just found this in the last few days, is that the FDA is actually wanting to have an additional level of certification. So specific to biocompatibility, they audit laboratories, and the laboratories can comply with this accreditation scheme for conformity assessment. And that is further building confidence in the lab's capabilities so that when the lab submits a report, the FDA can quickly review it and drastically shorten review times. This is just specific for biocompatibility right now as of September, and for some of the electrical safety standards. The training that they have online is saying that they're going to expand this program though for other testing. So I thought that was interesting to note. Again, it's been brought up that maybe what we need is some more auditing of the test labs specific for the tests that they're performing. And certainly for the tests that we're involved with wheelchairs and wheelchair seating, again, that's a very specialized type of work. And so it feels like maybe the FDA is considering this thought for a number of types of tests. But a little bit of a detour there, but I thought that was interesting to share with this group. In EMEA, as in the European countries, as the medical device requirements are being applied, they're still just asking for good laboratory practice. So again, in the official journal of the European Union, they're not asking that labs that perform wheelchair or wheelchair seating testing be certified to ISO 17025. Where we do see, same with the wheelchair standards themselves. The STEM standards for manual and power chairs, again, don't make that laboratory specification. But where we do see ISO 17025 lab certification being asked for is in the European countries that have specific tenders to be able to sell in their countries or regions. And for a lot of our tests, whether they're in the 7176 series or the 16840 series, it's very difficult to find labs with that full range of expertise to offer labs, and then I mean to offer those test results. And then it's even more difficult to find labs that have that extra layer of ISO 17025 certification. So understanding this is the situation for our world, for our products, and the types of tests that are being conducted, we had within the ISO committees, within the wheelchair seating subcommittee and the wheelchair seating committee, made a proposal to the ISO Technical Committee 173, which is that highest level assistive device technical committee. We proposed a statement that could explain the situation and could recommend that a lab could be considered to be qualified based on their good laboratory practices or ISO 17025 certification or another auditable process. And this was rejected at the time. This was the Berlin meeting in 2022. The leadership of the technical committee said that they tend to write standards so that the standards stand alone and can be conducted by anyone, whether that's for research or your own understanding or product development, but also that they don't want to be involved in specific regulations and guidance about regulatory requirements. That's a separate thing. However, after that meeting, as we continued looking into this, we did find that the biocompatibility standard 10993-1 does have a statement that is similar to what we're trying to convey. And it states that for that particular standard, for regulatory submission, these studies should be conducted using GLP or ISO IEC 17025 as applicable to the respective country and comply with regulations related to animal welfare in this case. And it goes on to say that statistical analysis of data is recommended and can be used whenever appropriate. So this is exactly the type of spirit of a statement that we want to share. And we're really wanting to share this information with those regulatory bodies that are forcing the use of only ISO 17025 certified labs. So back in our wheelchair seating committee, we had worked within SC1 to develop this wheelchair and wheelchair seating standards reference, which is available on the ISO website. So this reference explains about the wheelchair and wheelchair seating standards, who develops them, how they're used, and it lists out those standards and offers guidance. And it's really intended to be a guidance document for anyone, but specifically for regulators, because what we often find is that you have these policymakers that have their own checklists of standards to use that often aren't repeated year after, or aren't updated, and they're repeated year after year after year, and they're not necessarily understanding what the current standards are, what the state of the science is. So that's why we wrote this document, and we put it in a public place so that anyone can access it. Whether you're a laboratory trying to justify that your methods are appropriate, and maybe working with a customer to push back against a regulator or other audiences, we wanted to make this resource. So it seemed like the right place to add this information explaining about the challenge of the testing within the ISO 7176 and ISO 16840 series of testing. So we made this paragraph that's highlighted in yellow. We put it under the regulatory implications section so that we can guide regulators, policymakers, prescribers, and product designers through these standards and give them this understanding that these are very specialized bench tests for very unique products. And as a result, the experts in laboratories that can conduct these tests is rather limited. So we are guiding the reader to look for labs that are generating reproducible and robust data, and they're calibrating their equipment, they're training their personnel, they're documenting the results, and they're doing all of that by following appropriate scientific laboratory practices. We do recommend that this be under verifiable quality assurance processes like ISO 9001 or ISO 1345. It could be ISO 17025 or just general good laboratory practices or other auditable systems. So this update is just going into that document now. Literally today, the secretary is working to get that uploaded and get that onto the ISO public site. And again, we're hoping that this is something that we can help educate policymakers on when we have good laboratories that have a history with developing these tests or conducting these tests and should be able to be used by manufacturers and by others who need some testing performed. So that's the update I wanted to bring to you, and I was hoping that we could talk as a group about what your experiences have been, what your thoughts are with this. Is there more that we can do to make sure testing is appropriate and accessible and more broadly available?
Thank you, Kara, for your presentation. It was very useful, and also thank you for your leadership on making these changes. I want to actually call Dean. I know that, Dean, you sent me an email about this topic. So just wanted to put you in contact with Kara in case there's something specific you would like to know about.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, Kara, thank you so much for your time and the presentation. It was quite insightful. It actually gave me a lot of things to think about. We've been facing the same problem actually, where mostly for us is there wasn't any clear path on how to go about the accreditation system. So for us in South Africa, under the South African National Accreditation System, we are required to be accredited according to 17025. But it's not so clear. You know, you pursue them, they say you need to do that, and then you pursue someone else different in the industry and they say it's not that necessary. You just have to be specific to the standard you're testing for. So for example, if you're testing according to ISO 7176, and then you just have to, you know, make sure that you maintain calibrating the equipment, you know, checking personnel in the laboratory and other practices as well. But we just wanted to get more, we wanted to really get accredited, and the emails that I had sent to you earlier on where the major hurdle that we were facing when it comes to accreditation was having what you call this, the inter-laboratory comparison tests. And the major issue that we're facing is that we didn't have any other laboratory that has this accreditation status. So we couldn't have any laboratory that we can have the scheme with. So I had reached out to James, it's Jim from Cranefield Impact Center. And also I was wondering that if you are ISO accredited, if we can, you know, partake in also like a scheme for this ISO 17025. Yeah.
Yeah, you bring up some of the other important issues and challenges for our industry, and that interlaboratory validation of the methods is one of them. We don't have that many laboratories in the world that conduct these tests, and it's very difficult then to do that. We ourselves as a manufacturer, we do not have a certified in-house lab. So in a lot of these cases, you asked a few questions and brought up a few things. Part of it can be who is asking for the results to be certified, and if it's possible to have a conversation with them that yes, these are the processes we have in place, these are the controls, we are following all these good laboratory practices. Would just a 17025 umbrella certification be sufficient? Knowing that maybe you can't get that interlaboratory testing performed, or maybe you can through some members of this group, but that's quite an extra burden. And That could be one approach, and that's what I've understood as well. In some cases, some of the countries or tenders are just looking for that 17025 cert, which is another problem because there can be a large lab that conducts all kinds of mechanical and chemical testing that doesn't really know anything about wheelchairs and how to appropriately test them, but they have that cert. But the results that they're going to get aren't going to be necessarily appropriate, or their setups may be off, or there can be other issues. So you can also be lulled into a false sense of security just because a lab has a cert doesn't mean they can perform the test. So
Yeah, I think we should be more in contact, and so that we just keep on, discussing more of these issues, because clearly we are trailblazing and all these processes and stuff. But my other question was, so if we are to continue testing without the accreditation status, does it mean that we can certify products, or we just passing products for a specific standard? So for example, if a manufacturer wants to test according to CN 1, CN 6, if they pass, is it like they pass the standard in the report, or is it we have certified them that they have passed according to? Because I think there's a difference between, being able to certify a product. If, my understanding was if you are accredited as a lab, you can certify products. But if you're not accredited, you can't certify products. You pretty much just issue reports that state, is it a pass or fail?
I believe you're correct about that. I wonder if some of the other labs on the call can speak to that.
Yeah. I think Shona has a hand up.
Yes, and I don't see too many other testing centers joining today.
Oh, okay, that's too bad.
So the accreditation, if you have the accreditation, you can issue a report that has that shows that it's been done by an accredited laboratory. And so one of the countries that requires that for the tender, that's what they want to see. The certification of, as far as I know, there are no certifications of any mobility products. Like if you say, you look at a water heater or something and it's got a certification label on it. So that would be if somebody like Resna, for example, said they wanted to offer a certification label that says it met Resna standards or something, that would be an entirely different thing, where some body like ISWP or something would say we're going to issue a certification that would be put on the product, and then that body would say this is what has to be done to achieve that certification, to put that certification label on the product. So just because you're accredited lab doesn't mean you can make up a certification process for a product. It just means that you've tested the product as an accredited laboratory that that's following not just following, but is audited to meet the 17025 accredited process. So I can say, as being an accredited laboratory, I can say that I've learned an incredible amount about what it takes to not just have your equipment meet the requirements that you're testing with, which is one important part of it, but all your processes are meeting the 17025 process. So we've gone through our initial accreditation process, which took 4 days of on-site inspection by an inspector watching all of our test procedures, and then the annual renewal that occurred after the first year, and then you get audited every 2 years to make sure that you're following those accredited procedures. So it's very expensive because it's very time consuming, and you also have to track all of your documents very carefully, and so it actually requires you to, it doesn't require you to, but if you have document tracking software document control system that makes it a whole lot easier to meet the 1705 procedures to have document controls in place. But so the certification, when you see a certification on a product like a furnace or a water heater or something like that, that's a certification label. And RESNA actually considered, and I know this because I was part of RESNA's standards body, RESNA considered trying to have, you know, a certification label for products, and that's a whole nother set of things that RESNA would have to do as an organization to actually certify products as meeting certain standards. And then there's a certain liability that occurs there as well for that organization that would use that would have that certification label, because that organization would be certifying that product meets the standards. Does that makes you understand the difference there? Did I answer the question? The difference between a certification and an accredited test lab. Certification is just
thanks so
for
much.
products.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
And Dean, speaking as a manufacturer, for us, it really comes down to what we want to use the test results for. If we want an independent lab to better understand our products and the safety and performance and maybe inform our designs, and we're not selling in markets that are asking for 17025 certification, then there's obviously still great value in those test results for us. But it's when we then sometimes have to repeat testing because a region may make that a requirement, even though we have, scientifically appropriate results and great data from a trusted lab. They just don't have that additional certification. We sometimes have to find a different lab and repeat our testing.
Yeah, I think one of the other reasons is that, you know, we are ShonaQuip, we also manufacture devices, so we wanted to have a way of, you know, putting trust out there that, you know, we are impartial as well. So one of the things is having a QMS in place. 17025 will help with that, you know, we are testing as well as manufacturing, but these, you know, are different entities, and as well they are not influencing one another. So a QMS was like a good structure to have in place that, you know, makes sure that people can have trust and, you know, confidence. Also being like a company coming from Africa and wanting to export out to, you know, like first world countries. So the requirements just get like really strict, and it was one good thing to have here.
Yeah, absolutely. And
you might explain that a QMS is a quality management system, and typically has about
Peter.
19 parts, and you can purchase templates for quality management systems, and then you can edit and revise the quality management system to reflect how you actually do that in your own organization or your own test lab to meet all the elements of the quality management system.
So our organization has a QMS according to 13845, which is for medical devices. So we wanted to have another QMS for the lab to show that, you know, the lab is also competent enough to, you know, have the GLP in place as well. So it was just like something. But thank you so much, Peter. I really appreciate you guys' time. It's been something that has been challenging for us, but, you know, it's quite a good thing to know that, you know, other people are also facing the same challenges, and we can team up and, you know, share ideas and, you know, how the best way to work through this. Yeah, thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you. Thanks for your contributions.
Thank you. Shauna, do you want to jump in with your comment or question?
Yeah, if there's time, I just had a quick question is, would having the certification, the SANUS in place for us, be of value in terms of designing and developing innovative new tests? Because my understanding is without it, we are unable to start exploring and innovating around tests which are more appropriate for rural environments and getting those in place. So obviously for us, the certification, as Dean said, is really, really important for our own internal purpose, but also for changing the story around wheelchair design and manufacture in Africa, because it's a surprise to people that we have 13485, let alone are now looking at testing certification. But I'm very interested in the innovation and the opportunity the lab would provide us for that as well. So that was just my.
So for development of new tests and standards and even technical reports and guidance documents, really your path is through the National Standards Committee and to the ISO committee. Certainly having your lab actively engaged in that process, and within the development of standards, doing some interlaboratory testing as standards are developed, that's a huge plus, but it's also not a requirement. So we have, in the Wheelchair Seating Committee, we've been very active developing new standards in the last couple of years, one for stability of wheelchair seating, one for the new flammability test. And we have done interlaboratory testing, of course, in that development, but not all the labs that participated were ISO 17025 certified labs. I absolutely agree. We need some more work in the standards and more input from different regions and environments and considerations. So I personally would encourage you to be active within the standards group and make those proposals and engage, and you'll find a lot of really willing partners.
Thank you, Kara. I'm gonna have to, because of time, I'm gonna have to say bye to everyone. I want to wish everyone happy holidays and a happy new year. We will continue to meet as usual on the second Wednesday of every 3 months. So our next meeting is going to be on March 13th at the same time. We didn't get a chance to meet some of our new members, but next meeting for sure, Johnson, I'd like to introduce you to everyone else. Thank you for staying with us and look forward to seeing you next year.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Happy holidays.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.